Hello, Earth Angel, and welcome to episode 37 of the Devotional Drip, where we are going to invite you to open and surrender and claim your ecstatic higher self rebirth. If you've never joined us before, a little intro. The Devotional Drip is a weekly personal development and higher self embodiment coaching series to support creatives, visionaries, leaders, and light workers on their non-linear journeys and devotional paths of healing and awakening and empowerment and radical self-care and revolutionary self-love to support their higher self realization process in relationship to themselves, their journey, the world, and their purpose work. My name is Sarah. I am a spiritual and somatic coach, creative consultant, photo witch, dancer, multidisciplinary artist, devoted mystic, and higher self embodiment doula, supporting visionary entrepreneurs, change-making creatives, and heart-based leaders through somatic and artful and playful and sensual and spiritual portals into self-care that actually hits the spot, empowered self-healing, sovereign self-leadership, and trauma-informed spiritual awakening anchored in the body, multidimensional self-expression, and higher self-embodiment. If you find this video supportive, please like and comment with your biggest takeaways and revelations, and subscribe to the Blood, Bone, and Honey YouTube channel so that you never miss a drip. And then following this drip, I'll invite those of you who are in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot membership to join me for a corresponding higher self meditation to support you in integrating and digesting and applying what you receive in today's transmission. And you can go to patreon.com/blood, bone, and honey to explore our membership tiers and join us. We also have a weekly corresponding yoga dance class, a restorative flow, a mind-body centering chakra flow, a private Discord community, and all of the somatic movement prompts, journal prompts, and playlists that we use for all of our practices and all of our drips in a living practice library of pre-recorded practices, with all kinds of invitations to expand and express and explore in your higher self embodiment process. So today's episode 37 of the Devotional Drip, you're going to be invited into your ecstatic higher self rebirth. So last Friday, January 20th, we welcomed in Aquarius season. On Saturday, we had a super new moon as well as the Lunar New Year, which also marks Lunar In Bulk. This represents the halfway and midway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Imbolc is a Celtic holy day, and my great-grandfather actually spoke fluent Gaelic, and I come from a long Celtic lineage, so I'm going to call on my wise and well-heeled ancestors to pour through this drip with all of the Imbolc codes, because Imbolc is very connected to the process of regeneration and rebirth and emergence. So let's all take a moment here at the top of this drip to call in our wise and well-heeled ancestors together, call in our higher selves, call in a little circle of protection, creating a container for ourselves to ecstatically birth aspects of our higher self here and now in this devotional drip and throughout the next chapter of our journey leading up to the spring equinox at the end of March. So let's just drop into a few breaths together. You can close your eyes if you'd like. Start to notice your breath. And on the inhale, I'm going to invite you to call in support from your higher self, call in light, call in resource, breathe that up through the body. And then on the exhale, just let that light, let that presence of your higher self wash over you. And then see that light extending 6 feet in all directions, 12 feet in all directions, and then infinitely in all directions, your higher self light radiating to surround you. then surrounding that light, sort of containing that light and beaming more light into your container of light to help you resource and rise are your guides and your wise and well-healed ancestors. So calling them to hold the perimeter of your sacred circle to just reinforce an extra layer of protection and guidance. And as you're breathing up this resource of your higher self and letting it wash over you, you can also see the sacred circle of your guides and your ancestors surrounding you, creating a container. And then just take a few breaths here to feel yourself in sovereign space. Feel your energy. And if there's anything that isn't yours, that's not your energy, that's hanging out in your field, you can just breathe light out and invite your ancestors and your guides to breathe light in. And you can visualize any blocked energy in your field just being dissipated and ecstatically broken open and dissolved through light. Breathing into that, enjoying that, transcending maybe a frequency or vibration that you had been embodying prior to this drip, and allowing yourself to move up the vibrational scale, allowing yourself to move up the emotional scale. Because as we know, vibration precedes manifestation. So whatever it is that we are embodying vibrationally, that's also what we're magnetizing towards us. Whatever we're embodying vibrationally, we are actively creating in the world around us. So claim your creation space today. And if you'd like, you can also grab a journal. You can grab an oracle or tarot deck of your choice. We're going to do a little introduction into Imbolc, the energy of Imbolc, this halfway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. Situate ourselves there, talk a little bit about Aquarius season, and then we'll go into our prompts for the drip today. As always, no matter when you are catching this drip, my intention is that it is relevant and here to support you. So even if we're not in Aquarius season, even if you're not in Aquarius season when you're catching this, even if we're not in the Imbolc portal when you happen to be watching this, there's still codes around regeneration and rebirth that your higher self is guiding you to tune into at this point in time for a reason. So trust your process, trust your timing, and as we explore this together, again, please drop into the comments. Let me know what is resonating, what is registering, what is getting stirred up and woken up, what is gestating, and what awakens for you through this drip. So we have 2 months of emergence ahead of us right now. The Imbolc portal opened with the new moon in Aquarius, and we will be invited to gestate and dance and grow and wake up and dream and express with this energy until February 3rd. So we're moving into the Imbolc portal. Imbolc is a portal that holds codes of rebirth and emergence, 2 of our favorite codes here in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Mystery School. And it's this time where the seeds start to dance in the soil, and what was sleeping and frozen starts to gestate and wake up. As a reminder, we are in the midst of Aquarius season, and Aquarius is a fixed air sign, providing some anchoring for the ways that we are taking flight in consciousness at this time. You may have access to a renewed sense of inspiration, ideas, and ways to creatively collaborate in relationship to support your own higher self rebirth and realization process, as well as the activation and rebirth of those around you, because we are not separate, right? So our rebirth, our regeneration, our realization, our resurrection is inherently connected to the rebirth, the resurrection, the regeneration, and the awakening of every other being on planet Earth, including the trees, as I look out to this beautiful snowy landscape in front of me. So really just anchoring into our rebirth, and our activation and our awakening is connected to the collective rebirth, the collective ascension, and the collective awakening. Aquarius is also connected to community and unity and communication and connectivity and the ancient future. So we also receive this levity, this boost, this renewed inspiration towards how we can create that and with whom we are being called to create that with. I know that that's been showing up in my life at this time. How has that been showing up in yours? How have some new relationships and community come forward that feel mutually beneficial, mutually supportive, symbiotic, reciprocitous? These are some of the codes that we're also in at this time during Aquarius season. Fixed signs fall in the middle of a season, and Aquarius, as we know, is a fixed sign. So we are falling right in the middle of winter and spring. So we're at this like really transient halfway point where there's a lot of transformation and regeneration happening. Aquarius is also known as the water bearer and is connected to the star card, bringing us an infusion of refreshed introspection, hope, and then from that hope, the capacity to meet and care for ourselves deeply as we gestate. While Aquarius is known as the water bearer because of its connection to the star card, it is not a water sign, it is an air sign. We explored Aquarius connected to the element of air and the heart in last week's episode of the Devotional Drip, working with the element of air connected to the heart chakra specifically in episode 36 of the Devotional Drip. Your heart is a divine translator and transmitter and communicator with wings. So if you need to get into a little bit of heart speak and channeling from the heart and reminding yourself that your heart is the steering wheel, it's the guide, it's the compass in all moments pointing you towards what is a holy hell yes and a holy hell no, please tune into episode 36 of the Devotional Drip. And if you're in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot, there is a higher self meditation, a yoga dance flow, a restorative yoga class, and a mind body centering chakra flow waiting for you in our living practice library. So I hope that that supports you in tuning in with your heart. So in this week's episode of The Drip and in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot, we're moving into pillar 5 of the 7 pillars of higher self-embodiment. The 7 pillars of higher self-embodiment is my unique framework and methodology that functions as a 7-step multidimensional self-care system that guides you in facilitating mind, body, and higher self connection so that no matter what comes up on your journey, you can rise to meet your path of purpose, resourced and embodied in the living prayer of your primordial peace and sovereign higher self power. We have a special community journey coming up at the beginning of February where I'm going to walk with you through the 7 pillars of higher self embodiment in a very special 7-day event. So stay tuned for more about that on next week's episode. We're going to have a very special announcement and some goodies that I'm going to be offering to the newsletter. So you can check the link in the description to join the newsletter so that you never miss a drip. And if you're not following us on Instagram, be sure to check in there as well as TikTok. I'm getting ready to move into a new season of content creation and showing up on social again in a new and infused and higher self rebirthed way. So you can catch me there. Hello, Helen. Welcome. Oh, what a beautiful time for you to pop on. Helen was part of our very first 7 days of the 7 pillars of higher self-embodiment journey we did back in 2020. And I don't know about y'all, but it feels like the last 3 years have been this major cycle of regeneration and rebirth. And so it's very exciting to be cycling back 3 years later to this journey. And I'm so excited to talk more about that. So in pillar 5, we are exploring the throat chakra, which is connected to the element of ether or vibration. So in the root chakra, we have earth. In the sacral chakra, we have water. In the solar plexus, we have fire. In the heart chakra, we have air. And then as we ascend to the throat, we are in this investigation of ether and vibration, and that which cannot be seen but is always being translated from the inside out. So it's actually upon the foundations of pillar 1, 2, 3, and 4, or chakra 1, 2, 3, and 4. The 7 pillars of higher self embodiment deeply correspond to the 7 main chakra system. We build our connection and our ability to translate codes from the inside out through our connection to earth, through our connection to water, through our connection to fire, through our connection to air, and through our connection to the lower half of our body. So as we're channeling and as we're translating, of course, we're receiving all of this information beaming in, but where is it beaming into? It's beaming into the body. So as we're translating in pillar 5, as we're translating in chakra 5, as we are allowing ourselves to ecstatically birth our unique higher self code from the inside out, we're actually reaching inside, listening inside, and doing that from the inside out. So again, the throat chakra is connected to the element of ether or vibration and invites us to translate or express ourselves from the inside out. What is birth if not a translation, an expression, and a creation from the inside? Birth is purification, initiation, dedication, devotion, commitment, transformation, metamorphosis, wild, ecstatic, transcendent, prophecy, prayer, shadow work, death, and ascension simultaneously. Birth is a portal that also welcomes death to create space for new life. So we are in the circle, we are in the spiral. And actually, when we're working with the element of the throat and the element of ether, we're actually translating from the spirals. And in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot last week, a lot of the movement that we explored in our practice was actually from the spiralic nature of our body. So we explored the arms and the legs as tubes and spirals. We explored the heart as this infinite spiral. So if that sounds interesting to you, those were all channeled in alignment with the Aquarius new moon, Aquarius season. Aquarius is connected to the element of air, and that is available for you in the membership. So you are divine by design. You are divine by design. We are divine by design. We are born perfect. We are born ecstatic. We are born awakened. And to ecstatically birth your higher self is to let go and let in more of your true soul self nature. It's not about becoming something different. It's about becoming more truly, uniquely you. What conditions and containers and agreements and sacred boundaries and sacred intentions do you need to cultivate, create, express, and fiercely call in for yourself at this time as a part of your own birth team, as your own highest self advocate, as your own highest guide, as your own highest self authority? We've been talking about authority on the devotional drip as this invitation to author our reality. And when we're in the throat, we're also in the codes of the creatrix or the creator or the divine artist. So if we are divine by design, then the process of ecstatically birthing our higher selves is a process of peeling back all of the layers of conditioning and programming to actually access that unique original code and blueprint of our soul. So what conditions and containers, again, do you need to cultivate, create, express, and fiercely call in for yourself at this time? Maybe it's also calling in support. I did a birth doula training back in I like lose count of the years at this point, 2018 into 2019, which actually inspired my work as a higher self embodiment doula. And I love birth work. I love birth. I'm very passionate about birth. It's like one of the biggest metaphors and methodologies and ideas that I reference in my coaching work, because I think that is where I know that's where it all starts. And so whether we're birthing babies or we're birthing ourselves or we're birthing our purpose or the earth is rebirthing itself cyclically through the seasons, birth and death is really the fabric of everything. So that's where I situate myself from as a higher self embodiment doula. And what I really was awakened to in my birth doula training is how sanitized and commodified and medicalized and oppressed the sort of like process of birth, the story of birth, the wisdom of birth has become in our modern day culture, where birth has been taken out of the hands of the birthing person, and birthing people have been disempowered in relationship to their own bodies and their own capacity to like really steward their own birthing experience in the way that they want to have it. We're told this is the way birth should be. This is the way birth should work. You should be scheduling your induction. It is timed, it is scheduled. How patriarchal. And like no judgment, no shade. It's just pointing to the way that these systems of oppression have basically programmed and conditioned us and gaslit us out of our innate power, out of our innate decision-making power and our sovereignty to claim what feels good for us and what does not feel good for us. This continuous conditioning that says you have to reach outside of yourself. You have to grasp outside of yourself to create the conditions to feel safe internally, versus you need to reach inside of yourself to create those conditions to feel safe internally. And then that inner safety and that inner self-reclamation and that inner self-love and that inner texture of like, I really fuck with myself this deeply, then pours out into the way that you create and command spaces held for you. And that is the level of conviction that we are approaching our own higher self rebirth. We're not writing the date on the calendar. We're not writing it in our planner. We're not saying these are the 10 steps and this is how it's going to go. In our ecstatic birth, we are open to the process as it unfolds, and we are unwilling to judge any part of the process as wrong. My mind was so blown when I first started studying birth, and I was like, whoa, during birth, like you could birth in a squat and be like swaying your hips, and in the process of birthing this baby, you could also potentially shit on the floor. Like that is so raw and real. And like that's what we're dealing with when it comes to also the journey and the process of personal transformation and personal metamorphosis and the process of rebirthing ourselves over and over and over and over and over again to get more in touch, more in touch, more in touch, more in touch with our true nature, bringing more of our higher selves into the body, into the soma, into the body, into the soma. And as that's happening, there's this ecstatic cracking open. There's some shitting on the floor. There's some blood everywhere. There is like this messy metamorphic process of becoming that arrives. And I think inside of the programming and conditioning of sanitized birth and also sanitized, medicalized, controlled death, we have forgotten that this process of ecstatic birth and transformation and metamorphosis is meant to be messy. Like I'm looking out right now. I'm just going to show you like literally what my view is right now. I'm looking out right now at all this snow. Like that melt is going to be wild. And I've had a couple of seasons now here in upstate New York of the snow melt just producing like the most muddy season ever, and you got to get out there in your muck boots and you got to know you're going to get mud on you, and it just has to not be a problem or you'll be scared to go outside. And so I just want to use that as a metaphor for our own process. Like we have to know that in the process of higher self embodiment, in the process of claiming our desires, in the process of claiming our power and ecstatically rebirthing the parts of ourselves that may have been conditioned to be censored, not just within us, but maybe within our lineage for thousands of years. We have to know that that snow melt, that unfreezing process is going to get a little messy. And we just have to be in agreement with it. And if we can be in agreement with birth is ecstatic, birth is messy, birth is unpredictable, birth is fully human and fully divine, then when the fully human and the fully divine parts are dancing together simultaneously, we don't judge it as wrong. Like our birth is not going to look the way that anyone else's birth is going to look. And all ways of birthing are valid. All ways of birthing are valid. The most medicalized version of that and the most raw, free version of that. And again, I'm using this as a metaphor for our own birth. It's all valid. And inside of that, what I'm prompting you to get in touch with is in your process. What do you need? What do you want? And what conditions and what container are you ready to claim and cultivate for yourself in this next season of becoming? So the word in bulk, so we entered this portal of in bulk starting with the Aquarius new moon, and it'll culminate at the beginning of February, peak date being February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd traditionally. The word in bulk quite literally means in the belly of the mother, because the seeds of spring are beginning to stir in the belly of Mother Earth. Just as at this time, the seeds of our intention, of our prayers, maybe that we've been speaking out and setting since Samhain, October 31st, or the winter solstice, December 21st. So thinking back to maybe some of the things you were speaking and seeding into being at this time, those seeds that you were speaking and praying and dreaming into being are starting to gestate. They're starting to take form. They're starting to receive nutrients. The soil is starting to stir. It also refers to, in bulk, also refers to the fact that the Celtic livestock were breeding at this time. So in bulk is traditionally a Celtic holiday. And the Celtic livestock were breeding, and many cows were ready to give birth. Lambing and calving season was about to begin. And this was a time when the grass began to grow again with the onset of warmer temperatures. Mother sheep began to lactate, and they could once again feed on the freshly growing grass as their udders filled with milk. So this too is happening to us because we are a mirror of the earth, a mirror of the animals, just as they are a mirror of us. And cyclically, seasonally, if you're catching this in the Northern Hemisphere, that's what we're all moving through at this time. So there is this collective, ecstatic, higher self rebirth and emergence that we're all being called into in the Northern Hemisphere. At this time, we shepherd ourselves to make way for the milk. As we surrender to our ecstatic higher self rebirth, we create space for abundance, the abundance of our big bellies and our big ideas and our big dreams and our big communities and our big visions and our big weavings and the big action that we're going to take for the remainder of 2023. And here's a little blessing for in bulk that I want to share before we go into our prompts for today. May the life-stirring underground stir new dreams within you. May the flames of inspiration and passion be ignited within you. A blessing for in bulk. So again, the in bulk dates in the Northern Hemisphere, there is this beautiful portal that starts to open up with this Aquarius new moon that was upon us on January 21st, reaching a peak around January 31st to the 2nd of February. And then if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you would be celebrating this and welcoming this in towards the end of July, beginning of August, when we in the Northern Hemisphere are here celebrating Lionsgate portal. So really clicking into the wheel of the year here in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Mystery School, on the Devotional Drip, and in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot. I found that living in upstate New York has really brought me in realignment with my ancestral codes of living in alignment with the seasons. I often find that being here in upstate New York really mirrors the time that I've spent in Ireland, connecting with my ancestors and connecting with that land. And it's just really been a powerful process for me. So that's pouring into my work in a big way right now. And I will continue to talk more and more about the seasons. And I do want to actually shout out my friend, Emma. I'm going to share this in my newsletter this week as well as on Instagram, but she just birthed this incredible book with one of her friends called The Seasonal Family Almanac. Helen, I feel like you would be so into this book. It basically breaks down each season into 3 sort of micro seasons. So it'll be like, for example, the early beginning of winter, midwinter, which is right now, and then the end of winter. And she offers different recipes and crafts and rituals that are kid friendly and family friendly that you can drop into to honor the wheel of the year and the different energies and the plants that are blooming at that time. So I'm so excited about this book. The photos are literally so beautiful. She also has recipes. It's incredible. So I'll be shouting that out this week, and I'll also be resourcing that in my work as well this year. I'm excited to introduce some crafts and some ritual and some recipes from that book. And I'll just say, in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot, we have a private Discord community where we're basically building our own little social media space. And in one of our altars, we have like many altars and channels in there with different categories that you can drop into. And one of them is kitchen magic, where we drop in and share recipes. And I actually just saw that Ella dropped in some monkey bread today, and I'm excited to go check that out. So thank you to those of you who are sharing in the Discord space. It's so fun to build that with you. Okay, so birth is light and shadow work. The shadow is revealed and illuminated through the process of the birth portal opening. We're going to drop into our prompts for this episode. And our first prompt for this episode of the Devotional Drip, I invite you to get out your journal, write it down if you'd like, is: what do I need to release/receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature? What do I need to release and receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature? I actually pulled a card to set the tone for this episode of the Devotional Drip today last night when these prompts were flowing through. And I pulled the card Be Fluid from my Cosmic Dancer deck. And I'm just going to start out by giving us a reading from the Cosmic Dancer deck and what this card has to offer around being fluid. And this will be our entrance. So again, the prompt is: what do I need to release and receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature? You're also welcome to pull your own cards. You're welcome to journal that out and start writing out your own codes. I always invite people to have a journal with them for the Devotional Drip, so that even if you're like doing chores and doing dishes and tending to the temple, or you're driving, or you're just in the midst of transition, having a little journal nearby or dropping in with your notes following the episode can be nice, so that you can sort of take this expanded container of what we're offering here and have your own little higher self embodiment roadmap to work with for the week. I know that I like to tune into longer broadcasts like this and long form content when I'm doing chores and tending to my temple. So I'll literally like be listening to something on YouTube and I'll be doing the dishes, and then I'll just like have my journal right there with a pen. And if I hear something or I get some download, I'll just like jot down the note and then keep tending to my chores. So I always feel inspired to invite people to listen to the drip while they're doing chores. And maybe that's just because I love to do chores, but I think it can be nice, especially for those of us who are maybe neurodivergent and tend to function well with, my sister likes to call this like having a body double, that can really help our brains in focusing on the task at hand, because there's this other sort of energy pouring in and occupying another part of our brain. So celebrating all of the neurodivergent brains in the coven, including my own. Okay, so here's what the card Be Fluid has to offer. And I love this because fluidity really feels like a space and a texture and a code that we're collectively being invited to swim in deeply at this time as we ascend. There's so much fluidity there's so much fluid exploration on the planet right now. And I think that that is so symbolic of our return to our true nature, our return to the mother, our return to the earth, our return to remembering that there are seasons and cycles and we are not fixed, and there is not one fixed state, and there is not one fixed way to be. There are infinite multi-dimensional ways that we can be that are all valid, and we can change and we can transform moment to moment, breath to breath. And it is valid. It is valid to be a metamorphic being who is in constant, fluid, ever-changing, organic restructuring and reshaping. So here's what the card has to offer. In this great sea of dynamically shifting circumstances and events, now is a time to choose to flow over fixity. Be flexible, fluid, and gracefully adaptable. You are reminded to love what is. This does not mean resigning yourself to being stuck where you are. You can find the blessing and perfection in your present moment while simultaneously choosing to create positive change according to your highest vision for yourself, your life, and any situation. Such is the wisdom of fluidity. Fighting against what is already happening will likely manifest misery by putting you in opposition with what is already true. Instead, enter into the receptive, magnetic state of flowing surrender. After all, life is an endless dance of fluid, flowing continuity. Like water, be a shapeshifter and allow your form to change. Freeze, melt, boil, evaporate, condense, or cascade according to what is needed. Okay, we're going to end that one there because then it invites us into some movement. So I love this invitation to freeze, melt, boil, evaporate, condense, or cascade according to what is needed. So our prompt was, what do I need to release and receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature? Some of the energy that I'm getting from this card is, again, sort of like that planning energy. Like, this is like the date that I'm going to birth. This is the date that this thing is going to happen. This is the way that it's going to happen. This is the way it needs to happen. And the way that when we are attached to the way that something needs to happen, we miss out on the magic of the divine process. And there's an episode in our devotional drip archive called Surrendering Free Will to the Divine Will of My Higher Self. And I talk a lot about this process in that episode, like the way that divine process and sort of this raw process of birth, this messy process of birth that we were talking about. Helen is also a birth doula and is offering here in the comments, embracing the mess is absolutely key. Like, yes. And when we reject the mess, and we reject the rawness of that, we're also rejecting the divine process. We're rejecting the natural process. We're rejecting our true nature when we try to fix it and control it and name it and just be too grippy with it. It's like trying to give birth laying down on your back with your feet up in stirrups versus like creating space for your body to actually open in a way that supports your pelvis, in a way that's in alignment with natural law, in a way that's in alignment with gravity. Like, how insane that in medicalized birth space, birthing people are put on their backs and told to push. How symbolic of the way that we are sort of programmed to force ourselves to align with the timing of capitalism, white supremacy, and patriarchy, aka systems of oppression. Lay on your back and just push, do better, climb, pull up your bootstraps, work harder, prioritize your time better, time block better. It's just like, in the process of ecstatically rebirthing ourselves as our higher self, we are reminded that we get to be fluid in our birth process. And again, it's a valid way to be, it's a valid way to birth. So maybe there's this invitation to release resistance, release control, release bossing yourself around, release gripping in order to receive resource, receive what wants to come to you as a gift through the process. It's like the gift that can only be accessed through the process, the awakening that only can happen through the process. We can't purchase or command or demand our awakening. And thank goddess, because that also allows our ego to remember itself as the beloved, which is a couple of episodes back of the devotional drip. Highly recommend that episode. It allows our ego to remember itself as an expression of the divine, not as this its own fixed thing that has to constantly be tracking and worrying and wondering when the next shoe is going to drop. No, the ego is here to remember itself as divine. And then the process of spiritual awakening is the ego remembering itself as divine and then remembering it's here to be in service to the heart and remembering that we agreed to come here to this planet to wake up. And that journey of bringing a whole ecstatic higher self expression, atomic expression into this human body was always going to be a pressurized experience. And there's actually something that happens in that pressure, right? The raw physiological process and the way that pushing and sort of this energy of like needing to push and kind of like this urge and this surge to create something, to manifest something is also natural. And that's a different sensation than I need to control this. To push is to respond to a divine prompting. To receive that push and then think you need to control that because it's something that needs to be controlled and contained because it's too wild and it's too big is part of the programming, is part of the conditioning that says birth and death, and therefore you are too ecstatic, too wild, too big. You need to be drugged up, held down, and controlled because it's dangerous. It's just too dangerous to be this expressed. And you know who it's actually dangerous for to be that expressed? The systems of oppression that profit off of us being underexpressed and constantly trying to prove and gain and earn our place on the altar. When our place on the altar, our right to be higher self-expressed is part of our birthright on this planet. So the process of ecstatically birthing your higher self from the inside out is really you reclaiming your birthright to be expressed, fully expressed, wildly expressed, ecstatically expressed, uniquely expressed, not able to be put in a box because you're so goddess blessed expressed. So we're being called to release control so that we can receive the invitation to be in the fluid process of pushing and breathing and expanding and contracting, because that's birth too, right? It's not just pushing. It's also a process of expansion and contraction, inhaling and exhaling. And what is that? Fluidity. Fluidity. Again, anchoring. Like water, be a shapeshifter and allow your form to change, to freeze, to melt, to boil, to evaporate, to condense, or cascade according to what is needed. So this sort of feels like in relationship to what do I need to release and receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature. This also feels in relationship to sort of like the moment to moment process of ecstatically birthing our higher selves. Like, it's happening in every moment. Higher self embodiment, ecstatic, higher self rebirth, regeneration, metamorphosis. It's always happening because it's the most natural process. Like even today, the state of the earth looks different than it did yesterday. And today, actually, it's much colder outside and there's way more snow on the ground than there was this time last week. And maybe the ego would say, well, isn't it supposed to just like progressively get really cold and then all of a sudden the snow melts? How neat and tidy that would be. But that's not the natural process. That's not the true nature of the earth. Just like that's not the true nature of us. I mean, that points to the way that healing and awakening is also not linear. The earth is like, look, one day it's going to be 60 degrees, and the next day it's going to be freezing and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. Can you let that mirror back to you the way that sometimes the temperature is different within you? Sometimes the soil condition is different, and some days a little bit of this is needed and some days a little bit of that is needed. So again, when you're in this process, know that sometimes you're going to need to freeze. Sometimes you're going to need to melt. Sometimes you're going to need to boil. Sometimes you're going to need to let yourself completely evaporate. Sometimes you're going to need to let yourself condense. And then other times it'll be like this big snow melt of cascading fluid regeneration that's happening. And I think that's going to be our process over these next 2 months, moving towards the emergence of spring, because emergence itself is a process. So what do I need to release and receive so that I can gestate and express my true nature? Be fluid. I'm going to just leave that as our one card for this first prompt. Our next prompt is, what is awakening within me, asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression? What is awakening within me, asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical self-expression? Higher self-expression. All of our prompts for these episodes of The Drip are linked in our prompts altar in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot private Discord. So if you're ever looking for those and you're in the membership, you can find them linked there. And I also link to all of the past episodes. So at any point in time, you could drop into that prompt altar to receive a somatic movement prompt, journal prompt, or oracle or tarot card prompt to inspire your practice. And all of these prompts can be used as somatic journal prompts, movement prompts, and oracle or tarot card prompts to inspire your practice. So what is awakening within me, asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression? I'm feeling my beautiful Starseed Oracle deck. What is awakening within this collective so that they can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression? What do these earth angels need in their birthing process at this time? Okay, so again, we got You're Not For Everyone. This came forward last week as we were exploring our hearts as a divine translator. You are not for everyone. Embrace your weirdness and face your true north. And then called soul gifts and training. It's time to step up. So again, what is awakening within me, asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression? So this ecstatic higher self rebirth that you're going through, in the process of it and on the other side of it, I'm intuitively feeling the way that there's going to be new relationships that are going to come forward and old relationships that are going to take new shape. The more radically authentic you can be in your process of becoming more you, and the more fiercely devoted you can be to that, then the more you're focusing the currency of your consciousness on what is awakening and transforming within you, and you're less focused on how the outside world is reflecting your awakening back to you, or even how the outside world is receiving your transformation. Because sometimes the truth of ecstatically birthing our higher self is that in that process, it might crack open a paradigm that we were living in or relationships that we were once a part of. And it doesn't necessarily look like death, but it can look like that. And it can also look like birth at the same time. And that's really that regeneration, rebirth energy. Like there's death and birth. So as you are ecstatically birthing yourself, let the relationships, let the ways of being and doing that feel confining for you at this time, sort of back up and fall away and allow yourself to just stand in that radical sovereign space of sovereignty, of feeling yourself at the center of your own energy. And when you do that, just like this beautiful being is doing in this card, there's this self-reclamation, there's this radical higher self claiming, stewarding, remembering, I am my own, that we are called into operating from the energy of where we belong to ourselves so deeply and we're so focused on our own birth that we could give a shit if we shit on the floor during our birth process, if it's bloody and messy, if we look like a million different things in the process, because we're not focused on like what we look like specifically in that moment or what this all looks like in this moment. How does this look to other people? We're concerned with how it feels. When a birthing person is in their process, they don't care about how it looks. They are in the act of birthing. They are in the act of initiation. They are in the act of radical transformation. So we say this all the time, right? Like, don't be so concerned with what other people think. But okay, how do we do that? Where instead are we drawing our intention and our attention into ourselves, onto ourselves, and we're pouring it into our process? So our focus is going there, and we don't really have time to like worry about what it looks like to other people or what they think about our process, because first of all, it's a distraction and it siphons our energy. And in addition to that, we're not for everyone anyways. And even those who we are for, maybe in some parts of our metamorphosis, we have to like expand and contract and take a step away from certain relationships so that we can expand, and then we can come close into that relationship again or come back close into that space or whatever it may be for you. So let yourself be in this expansion and contraction process. If you need to back up, if you need to come closer, if you need to go over here, if you need to go over there, like animals, when they birth, they go into the forest and they say, fuck off. Let me be in my process. Do not disturb. Do not disrupt. And I'm just feeling a little bit of that energy that each of us as light workers and earth angels are being called into at this time. This next card is called. So what's been calling you? What's been calling you? If your higher self has been calling you, are you picking up the phone? What are they trying to say? Have you been ignoring the call? This moment in time, whether you're catching this in the middle of this in bulk portal in Aquarius season or at some other point down the line, this devotional drip invitation is a call to allow yourself to change, to allow yourself to take up space in a new way, to allow yourself to live your life like you're not for everyone, and to bask the programming that says we need to be approachable and digestible and really nice and available to everyone. The invitation is to meet that programming with a little bit of our animal, fierce, birthing self ferocity and say, no, I actually like need space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression. And in the same way, you may share your birth plan with someone and they may project some fear onto you like, oh, well, are you sure that's going to work out? Be mindful of who you share your birth plans for around your own awakening, around what it is that you're creating. Not everything is meant to be shared with everyone. And that is certainly something that I have had to learn in my process of showing up in my artistry and my leadership. Because some things are meant to just be held close to the heart and the womb and our sacred circle, right? So maybe at this time, there's also a space that you feel called into to do your work, or there's a coach or a mentor or someone that you feel called to invite into your birth space to help doula and midwife you into your full expression. I'm getting ready to reintroduce a beautiful session that I've been offering for many years as a new ceremonial container called the Higher Self Embodiment Ceremony. And if you're on my newsletter, you can look out for an announcement around that this week. I'm going to offer a couple sessions at a promo rate to celebrate this in bulk portal. And then the price will increase. So be sure to check your email, check Instagram, turn those notifications on. If you're part of the newsletter and you get the Blood, Bone, and Honey newsletter, move that from your promotions tab into your primary tab so that you don't miss any of this beautiful next level, next season birth portal container energy that we are calling forward for 2023. So what is awakening within me asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression? This claiming at the identity level, at the ego level, that I am not for everybody. I am my higher self. And that means that that's not going to sit well with everyone at all moments in time. But that doesn't matter. And I'm not scared of that real raw process of becoming, of the realness and the fierceness and the courage and the devotion and the commitment that's required to ecstatically rebirth myself as my higher self, because I'm being called. So if I'm called, I'm going to go. When earth angels, when light workers, when we are called, we go. Even if we don't know what it's going to look like, even if we don't understand exactly where we're being called, again, calling in this energy of the fluidity, there's already this knowing that we have right now that we're meant to be in this fluid process, that things that were once fixed and inside of boxes have been breaking open ecstatically over the last couple of years. And to be ecstatic is to transcend. And there has been a lot of transcending of old paradigms, of ways of being and doing, of identities, of self-concepts at this time. And it's also this process that's happening without us sort of needing to push it forward. Birth happens. Your body is invited to push in that process, but you're not pushing to birth. Birth is happening. So you are called to push. You are called to move. You are called to surrender. And really, when it comes to the act of pushing, if you can even feel into that in your body right now, if we push on the exhale, there's a surrender into the exhale, right? We fill up on the in-breath, and on the out-breath, we surrender. And all of that surrendered energy, all of that offering energy goes into that force, into that push, into that release. To push is to also release. So there's also this releasing of yourself. You're not for everyone. God, what a releasing meditation. How ecstatic to release ourselves from the need to be right for everyone, the need to be for everyone, the need for everyone to get what we're doing, to speak our language, to celebrate what it is that we're creating. We don't need that. We just need ourselves and, quite frankly, a small little circle of beings around us who are supporting us in order to make a really big impact in the world. It's not about quantity, especially in the birth space, right? You probably don't even want a whole bunch of people in there. It's about the quality of the support and the container that you're creating for yourself. So I know that as light workers and creatives, we can get excited about what it is that we're creating and wanting to birth and bring into the world. And there's also this sacred protective energy. It's like after birthing a baby, you may not want a bunch of visitors coming in immediately. You may want to just gestate in the womb of that postpartum energy and sort of just process what just happened. And even in the gestation process, there might be this desire to just kind of nest and be in the home and create the conditions for the birth to be ecstatic, which is really where we are seasonally right now. We are in the creating of the conditions so that our 2023 can be ecstatic. I don't know who started this idea that we should just take a couple of hours on New Year's Eve to set our intention for the year, and that's going to be us creating our container, and then we're just going to be good to go from there. That's not how birth works. Like, even if you were making a birth plan, you would probably take months, right? To like gather your birth team, be in your research around what feels good for you, what doesn't feel good for you. And so I just want to point to like January, February, March here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a time of snow melt and unfreezing and thawing out and pouring out. And what did this word offer us? Cascading, allowing ourselves to cascade in the snow melt of what the winter taught us, of what Capricorn season brought us in touch with. And now what Aquarius season is re-inspiring us to renew and regenerate forward. We can take the container of the winter to allow ourselves to gestate. Just like we can't rush the process of that big belly growing if we were to actually be growing a child, we also can't do that in our own process of birthing ourselves and of birthing our purpose work, of birthing our dreams and our highest visions. So we're being called to really let ourselves, let our consciousness, let the parts of us that are scared to be judged and censored and picked apart and projected onto, we're being invited to love those parts into liberation by reminding them that the call is not to be palatable. The call is not to be agreeable. The call of the light worker is not to have everyone like you. The call of the light worker is not to be the most like agreeable, docile person in the space. I don't know when light workers and healers sort of got that mark. Probably after we all started being burned and killed. That was like something that awakened within our consciousness because we needed to do that in order to keep ourselves safe. But what I want to say right here and right now is we don't have to do that anymore in this new paradigm. We are all here to tend to these new shoots of new earth that are awakening inside of us. And in that process of awakening, what is awakening within me, asking for space so that I can birth from ecstasy, excitement, and radical higher self-expression. We are not for everyone, and that is part of the calling. You're going to trigger people. You're going to upset people. People are not going to agree with you. They're going to project onto you 100111 on our time when I said that. And if we can just get a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is also part of the birth process, right? Like we got to surrender and breathe into the pain, breathe into the contraction, trust the creating space for our true natures. And then we remember that the contraction and the push and the pain and the blood and the shit and the fluids and the rawness and the realness is actually what we're hungry for. At the level of our humanity and our divinity, we want the realness of the human experience. I don't know about you, but I don't want Amazon to drop everything off at my door. I don't want a prepackaged meal in plastic. I want to have my hands like in that like avocado mash and mashing it into my beans and rice. And I want to make things with my hands, with my breath, with my blood, with my body, with my emotions. I don't want to run from the pain. I don't want to judge the negative emotions as bad. I want to lean into the push. I want to lean into the contraction. I want to make love to that pain until what? And this is what Deborah Piscali-Bonaro taught us in orgasmic birth training, until that pain turns into pleasure, baby. I want to talk about the real stuff. I don't want to be palatable. I don't want to censor myself. I don't want to create a sanitized space. I want to talk about what's real. So here's me expressing in my higher self-expression. How are you being called to ecstatically express in your purpose work, in your expression, in your ideas? Aquarius really calls us into like our unique codes, our unique ideas, what we are here to uniquely translate. So far, we're being told in the process of ecstatically birthing our higher selves, be fluid, release control, surrender into the contraction. It's part of the birth. that is here to serve your highest good. And all of the emotions as energy in motion are also here to serve our highest good too, right? Even the darkness and the depth of winter and all of the stuff that can come up there, like that is also here to, that contrast is also here to re-inspire us and reawaken us towards our gratitude for the light, and also simultaneously our gratitude for the cosmic womb dark space that these seeds that are starting to awaken now could not have been without the gestation process. So we're being invited to be fluid in our gestation and then inside of our awakening so that we can birth from a space of ecstasy, excitement, and radical expression. We're being reminded that we're not for everyone. We're not for everyone. And also, it's part of the calling to get more comfortable with that, to get more comfortable being an activator in a space. And I'm seeing you walking into a room and activating the room. And are you aware of that about yourself? Are you aware that as a light worker, when you walk into a room at the atomic level, other people notice at the atomic level? And that noticing and that sparking is not always going to be good. And I'm seeing High Priestess Isis, or like a High Priestess energy, like walk into a room, and how, infinite people could have infinite responses to that powerful energy. And they did. And being able to hold all of that at once, both the ways that at the atomic level you're going to spark awakening, and how that awakening is going to look like a whole spectrum of things, like from everything from being celebrated to people not being sure to people straight up rejecting you. The High Priestess holds it all, because she knows that anything that's reflecting back to her something that feels dark is actually an invitation for her or for them in that high priestess archetype, that high priest, that high magic archetype, to integrate the subconscious narrative that was hanging out there all along. So there's never really anything that's reflected back to us in the outside world that isn't pointing to something within us that's ready to ecstatically get broken open. And then over time, maybe that shadow narrative is reflected back to you in real time and you become familiar with it. And then all of a sudden, and we talked about this last week on the devotional drip, that which once scared us and felt like this beast and this, like almost like this block to us stepping more into our power, that uncertainty, that resistance, that actually becomes the portal. That becomes the portal to the awakening. So, prompt 3, where can I deeply commit to my undiluted and uncensored expression in my birthing process? Where can I deeply commit to my undiluted and uncensored expression in my birthing process? Again, we're in the energy also of the throat chakra, Vishuddha, translating vibration, creating space, being a channel for birth, being a channel to birth yourself, being a channel to birth being a channel to birth creative ideas, being a channel to birth new communities, being a channel to birth the bigness of your purpose, the bigness of the relationships that want to pour into your life. Where can we deeply commit to our undiluted and uncensored expression in our birthing process? We got fluid, we got you're not for everyone, and we've got called. It's like a very radical, ecstatic energy. I'm so excited to dance with this week in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot. And as a reminder, with every episode of the Devotional Drip, right now in the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot, there is a corresponding higher self meditation, a corresponding yoga dance practice, a corresponding restorative yoga practice, and a corresponding mind body centering chakra flow. This week, again, we're in the throat, we're in vibration, we're in ether, we're in resonance, we're in translating, we're in being a channel, we're in the energy of birth, we're working with the energy of the new moon, we're in this fertile portal of In Bulk, which literally translates to as in the mother's belly. So we're in the mother's belly right now as these little seeds waking up, all these seeds we've been planting since Samhain, which was around the end of October, and then the winter solstice. All of those seeds are starting to wake up and ecstatically awaken from the soil so that come the spring equinox, they are emerging, and we'll start to see these buds over the next 2 months. And that's also the exciting process of birth, right? Like you can see it happening over a span of time. And it really sort of like simultaneously like slows down and shows us how fast things can grow, transform, and change. We can see the process of growth of a belly in real time. We can see in real time, I love when this starts to happen, following actual in bulk in the beginning of February, when all the little like shoots start to like pop out from the tree and pop out from the earth, pointing to us how that's happening too. So we're getting ready for that. We're creating the conditions for that as the conditions are being created on our behalf, because we're just working in alignment with the seasons and the energy and what is being presented in front of us from the consciousness of our higher self. So prompt 3, where can I deeply commit to my undiluted and uncensored expression in my birthing process? Since we're like so in the energy of the seasons and those shoots coming forward, I'm going to pull from my Faceted Earth deck, 111 on our time together. Where can I deeply commit to my undiluted and uncensored higher self-expression in my birthing process? Where is the energy of our commitment and our devotion being called texturally in consciousness? Okay, Spade. So this card points to harvesting, digging up, creating space. I'm getting like very deeply like creating container. And to create a container is really to commit. And then something I've learned as a neurodivergent person is sometimes I need to, actually not even sometimes, every single time I create a container or a plan for myself, I also need time to be in an experimental process with that container, to be in sort of this like trial and error process, especially when it comes to like creating a container for my day or my week, or if I'm getting ready to go into a launch of a new project. I like need so much time and like 3 calendars and all the colors and just like space to create a container and then to try that out, see how that goes, and then return to the drawing board. So I'm sort of getting this like fierce self-permission to create a container and then try again. Create a container and then try again. Create a container and then try again. Create a container, rework it. Almost like the energy of making drafts or making a sculpture, like returning to it over and over and over again. And my word actually for 2023 is refinement. Coming to that same thing over and over again to refine, to reshape. What do I need now? What do I need now? What do I need now? And maybe it's just committing to asking ourselves that question in any moment that we feel called. What do you need now? What do I need now? What do I need now? What do I need now? How do I need to create space now? What needs to move now? So it's like, what do I need beyond what I've been told that I'm going to need, or beyond what I've been told is a valid container to birth myself, or a valid container to birth a business, or a valid container to birth a life, or to birth a relationship? Fuck what everyone else has said. What do I need now? What do I need now? Knowing that ultimately, like, we're holding this shovel as our higher selves, creating the space. And we can also hand that shovel to someone else and be like, hey, could you help me dig this out and create this space? Hence calling in a doula, calling in a midwife, calling in trusted friends and peers, maybe a birthing partner or partners. What do I need now? What do I need now? And then creating an environment for yourself where you actually have the space to ask that question. And I'm, for whatever reason, getting like, if there's a judgment around that being too needy, or someone projects onto you that that's too needy, or that's too much, or that's too disorganized, or that's too experimental, or you're never going to get anywhere if you just keep blah, blah, or that's not safe, or that's not the way that it's done, fiercely remember, my love, that you are not for everyone. And the way that you do it's not for everyone. And maybe the way that you do it is so courageous that it sparks fear in someone else, and then they project that fear onto you. And so what do you have to do again when something is projected onto you? What does the high priestess do? What does that energy of the archetype that's integrated their subconscious do, which is the archetype of higher self-embodiment? They let that energy come forward, and then they put up their hands in sovereignty and they say, this is my sacred space, and that's okay if you feel this way, but this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. So I'm just getting this fierce, like, I'm claiming this. I'm claiming this. This is the action I'm taking. I'm committing to creating the container. I'm committing to revisiting that container as many times as I need to support myself. I'm committed to being in an experimental process. I'm committed to trusting and moving from a consciousness of faith and trust, even if I don't know what's going to happen yet. I commit to creating a container where I allow myself to be as fluid as I am. I've literally stopped using the cue in my movement classes of straighten the leg, or straighten your arm, or straighten the spine. Because what is so true is that nothing is actually straight. Everything's made of spirals. And so there is, in this meditation of being invited to be in our fluidity, it's like, this path of healing is not linear. There's no fixed point you're going to get to. It's not a straight line. It's all fluid. It's always moving. You could create a container for your day, for your life, for your week, for this, maybe a launch that you're going into. And you might have to come back to the drawing board 18,000 times in order for that container to actually resonate with you at the level of your higher self. And it can be frustrating and it can feel discouraging when there's a lot of external programming that says move faster and do it this way. And I've had success doing it this way, so you should just do it this way too. And in our higher self-sovereignty, we're saying, great, I celebrate that that's what worked for you. I'm in a radical exploration of what works for me. So where can I deeply commit to my undiluted and uncensored expression in my birthing process? Create a unique container that resonates for you, and be willing to go back to the drawing board as many times as your soul calls you, to stay in a state of non-fixed fluidity, to continue checking in with the self. Like this sort of like going into the soil, digging and pulling up, digging and pulling up, digging and pulling up. Like if you've ever pulled like roots out of the ground, like it's a process. You might have to like take a break and go get some water and then come back and revisit, especially if those roots are really deep, especially if you're creating space in your life historically where there's been a lot of kind of blocked energy, or maybe there's been kind of a blocked energy for some time. Maybe I'm getting like some kind of collapse happened. And now like in the opening, in the ecstatic opening and the creating of space, you might feel like you're moving some boulders and some mountains in order to get there. Come be in our sacred movement practice and move that energy in your body, and watch the way that it opens up portals in your mind, in your heart, and in your spirit. Because anything that's going on in our mind is living in the tissues. It's already mapped into the body. So if we can work it out in our bodies and in our tissues, and we can drop into our bodies and we can give the mind a break, we'll find on the other side of that sometimes there's this ecstatic reopening, reprogramming, rewiring that happens at the level of our higher self-consciousness. So this also reminds me of a lot of the energy that we're in our movement practice. Like we're digging in, and we're also in our fluidity, and we're kind of going between like fluidity and then commitment in our movement practice, which is why I started introducing that. It's why I birthed the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot. I was like, look, if I'm going to get on here and give these mystery school level transmissions about higher self-embodiment, we're going to need a place to meditate. We're going to need a place to move. And then we're also going to need different kinds of movement. So our yoga dance flow is not the same as our restorative flow, is not the same as our mind body centering chakra flow. There's different ways that we're moving our bodies and moving energy, moving emotion as energy and motion in each of those practices through the soma, through the tissues, to create space for our ecstatic opening. Folks are saying that they are going into some of these practices and doing like multiple rounds of the same practice to like rinse and then rinse again. And that really reminds me of this energy. Like, let yourself be rinsed, whether you're in the blood, bone, and honey pot, or there's another way that you're in your embodiment practice right now. Like, bring this awakening into the body and create space in your physical body, creating space in your physical body, creating space in your physical home, creating space in your relationships, breathing space into time. Where can you collapse time to create space for more you? This prompt is inviting us to be deeply invested in an experimental, fluid process. Prompt 4, how can I offer myself sacred space to birth myself, relationships, and purpose work? How can I offer myself sacred space to birth myself, my relationships, and my purpose work? I'm going to move our little cards over here. Where do we want to go next? Feeling my Magdalene Oracle deck. So how can this collective of earth angels and light workers offer themselves sacred space to birth themselves, relationships, new kind of relationships, new textures of relationships that already exist, and the next level of your purpose work that is calling you, like that calling card, it is calling you. Okay, how can I offer myself sacred space to birth myself, relationships, and my purpose work? I love this. So we have sacred sexuality and we have saint in the center. I love this because we've been talking about ecstatic birth, orgasmic birth, the energy of orgasm, like surrendering and opening to orgasm, the way that ecstasy is something that we need to allow ourselves to breathe into, to create space to feel, to like ecstasy follows when we stop judging certain emotions or sensations as painful or bad or wrong. And we open to the messages that are underneath that initial judgment. Like, ever notice if you're feeling sad and then you judge the sadness as wrong, like it just gets worse? Or if you're feeling pain and then you judge the pain and you get angry at the pain almost like gets louder. I'm feeling the way that the Saint Sinner card also points to like really, really dropping judgment of any parts of ourselves as better or worse or right or wrong or holy or unholy or sacred or not sacred. And this is so much of this like puritanical, white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist programming that we've all been inducted into in our own processes and our own lineages and our own ways. Each of us have soaked up this programming in different ways, and it's manifested in different ways at different points of access and systemic oppression and resource and privilege, right? Like, this is all happening at different intersections and depths and levels, but we've all been indoctrinated into this at some depth. This programming that there's certain parts of our expression that are wrong or too much or dirty or unholy or not sacred or not right or not professional enough or not mature enough, or just like the not enoughness and the wrongness programming that's been so deeply embedded, because it keeps us disembodied, right? And it keeps us in a state of self-hate, and it keeps us in a state of shaming ourselves, and it keeps us in a state of constantly wondering if we're good enough, if we're ever going to actually be accepted, if we ever actually belong. In response to how can I offer myself sacred space to birth myself, my relationship, and my purpose work, this feels like reclaiming like the life force that's moving through you at all times, that is so unconcerned with being good or right or polite. It's concerned with being alive. It's concerned with feeling. It's concerned with ecstasy. It's concerned with Shakti, goddess life force, moving from the base of the spine to the crown of the head, and anything that it needs to clear on the way up and out. It will do ruthlessly. So how can I offer myself sacred space to birth myself, my relationships, and my purpose work? We can just know ahead of time it's going to feel like a Kundalini awakening. It's going to feel like things are going to be moved out of the way. Heaven and earth will be moved within us on behalf of us in response to our prayer to be more self-expressed. So need us not judge what's dying, what's falling away, and also what's getting illuminated in that process. Sometimes, like in the process of offering ourselves sacred space to birth, like some darkness, some ugliness, and I don't mean ugly as a judgment, like just some like underbelly stuff will come up. Like I'm remembering a story of one of my birth doula teachers told me about someone being in the birth space, and they were like really, really ready to progress in labor, and they were having a hard time, like their cervix was having a hard time dilating to that next space so that the baby could actually start descending down the birth canal. And isn't that interesting? Birth is a descension through the birth canal. In that moment, my teacher shared with us that their cervix was having a hard time dilating. So they asked this birthing person, like what's going on, what's getting in the way. And this birthing person, like emotionally, like ecstatically released these tears and started sharing about how they didn't trust their partner on the other side of this to actually be a good parent to this baby. And that distrust of their partner, that stuff that was coming up, was actually blocking the physiological birth process. Like the body was stopping because there was something in the mind that was saying, I'm not safe to actually bring this being earthside because I'm not going to be supported on the other side. And what a metaphor for what can happen with each of us as we have these ideas and these things we want to birth in ourselves or in our purpose work. Well, midway through the birth, and I've certainly experienced this for myself, like, well, what if it's not accepted? What if it's not received? What if I'm not okay on the other side of birthing this? What if people judge me? How can I offer myself sacred space to birth, to decide ahead of time that you don't give a fuck? That you trust so deeply that who is meant to weave with you Aquarian codes, that who you're meant to weave new earth with and build a new paradigm with is right here and going to be magnetized in response to your courage. You believe that, you root into that belief so deeply that everything else is just noise. It's going to get cleared anyways. So we're not focused on what's dying. We're not focused on what's clearing, because what we focus on expands, right? So we're not focused on what's burning off. We're not focused on what's getting transmuted. We're not focused on what's shedding. We're focused on what is entering this space as the shedding happens. What's coming into this creation space? What's awakening within us as we decide that there's no saint, there's no sinner, there's just us. There's no part that's good or bad or less evolved or more evolved. It's just us in this ecstatic process of remembering our true natures, remembering ourselves as multidimensional. So we offer ourselves the sacred space that we're going to do it the way that we need to do it, and that it's going to be ecstatic and it's going to feel like creation, and that also the energy of creation and like creating programs, creating things out in the world, building businesses, building relationships. The energy of creation is inherently sexual. It's inherently sensual. And so that energy is going to be a part of our process. So maybe you introduce a little self-pleasure practice for your midwinter musings, and you allow self-pleasure practice to be a part of supporting you in awakening. I'm not going to lie, there's few days that go by that I don't let myself be in an ecstatic, orgasmic self-pleasure practice, because I find that I'm creating so much and I'm showing up so much to be in the creation space with other people, that I need access to my own Shakti life force, goddess creation energy within me. And our right to access that and activate that and work with that energy as a part of what we're creating is also our divine birthright. And guess who was also practicing sex magic? Isis of ancient Egypt, the ultimate high priestess. Because that life force energy that rises from the base of our spine to the crown of our head, that is the orgasmic energy and helps us birth things out into the world, is the same force that creates babies. And it's the same force that allows life to happen, which is why in the ecstatic and orgasmic birth space, a lot of times you'll hear partners being invited into the space. People are making out while they're like quite literally in the process of expanding and contracting and giving way to birth. Or maybe a vibrator is brought into the space, or maybe certain self-pleasure tools are brought into the space in order to support the opening. So this just is like really calling me to invite us to offer ourselves pleasure and self-touch and slowness and patience and time. Birth can't be rushed. Orgasm can't be rushed. And foreplay is a part of sex and that process and that container for a reason. And again, I'm spelling it out because I never know these days what YouTube is going to censor. I know I'm straight up saying sexuality, but I feel like that word specifically gets triggered. So sorry to sound like an elementary school teacher, but we're just trying to not get taken down here on YouTube because it has happened before. So how can I offer myself sacred space to birth? Offer yourself pleasure, baby. Offer yourself slowness and time and space and big, juicy containers. That's why this drip is long. That's why our movement practices are anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, because we need time. Like, enough with like the get it done in 5 minutes and five steps to this. It's just like, we need space and time. Nothing happens in 5 minutes. And time is also collapsing, and the earth grid is shifting and expanding. So time also feels like it's speeding up. And I don't know about you, but I feel like what I used to be able to get done in one day now like expands across like 3 days to a week time period. So if you're feeling like that way too, maybe we're just picking up on something together, because it definitely feels like the way that we're being invited to dance with time in response to the grid of the earth shifting is also on behalf of our highest good, because it really does require us to slow down and to meet any programming that says you should be moving faster, or it should look this way, or that thing should already be done. Or, we're already this many weeks into 2023 and you're still meh, meh, meh. Like that. None of that is fucking real. Like, it's real in our bodies. Like, the experience of that pain and that trauma is real, but the programming that says we're supposed to be somewhere that we're not already is not real. Again, I'm just gonna turn my camera around. Like, there's literally just like pieces of chunks of snow just falling from these trees right now. Like, do not tell me I'm supposed to be anywhere or do anything. There's literally feet of snow outside. All I'm supposed to be doing is gestating and enjoying that process. And so the Saint Sinner card really feels like it's coming forward, in addition to the sacred sexuality card, to be like, offer yourself pleasure, foreplay, slowness, container. Go to the drawing board, come back and see how it felt. Do a little experiment, make a draft, see how that feels, share it with a couple trusted people. Let yourself be in an intimate creation space. Prompt number 5, in divine love and highest service, what unique code am I being called to translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self-embodiment? In divine love and highest service, what unique code am I being called to translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self-embodiment? So what do you bring into planet Earth this year? What's the texture of your creations? I'm really feeling the Cosmic Dancer deck again. Like, how can we, with the words translate, embody, and actualize, like, those feel very dancey to me. So I kind of want like an action card. How can this collective of earth angels translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self-embodiment, like in relationship to specifically this unique code? That one just came right out and tapped me on the hand. Actually, there's 2. Actually, there's 3. Okay. This feels like a 3-step process the way these cards just came out. So I'm going to show the first one first. So the first one, in response to, in divine love and highest service, what unique code am I being called to translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self-embodiment? It says communicate with spirit. So of course, this feels like an instruction card, right? It's like, well, duh, I'm going to need to communicate with spirit in order to know what unique code I'm going to translate. But like, actually, truly communicate with spirit and create a container where you can do that. A lot of times, speaking of orgasm and pleasure practice, I'll like be in my pleasure practice, and like in that space, I am like meditating and calling in my higher self, and I'm asking for some kind of like download or guidance to come through. Like sometimes when I'm in the middle of my workday, quite literally, and I am in a creation space, or I'm working on a sales page and I'm feeling blocked around some copy or some language, like I will drop into a devotional dance pleasure practice. I will drop into like a self-touch pleasure practice. And through that orgasmic, ecstatic, pleasurable exploration, I will quite literally utilize the container of my practice to communicate with my higher self. And a lot of times on the other side of that, I will get a code. Sometimes it's literally the episode title for the devotional drip or something like that. So don't discount the power of creating a container to communicate with spirit, to receive your unique codes that you uniquely are here to bring to the collective. Today, I was called to bring to the collective these codes around ecstatically rebirthing yourself, the right to do that, the way that we are perfectly in alignment with the seasons at this time to gestate and create the container for our ecstatic rebirth. And not only at this time of the year in general, but also at this time in humanity in 2023, after 3 really intense years of Saturn being in Aquarius and all of this massive astrological transit, we're actually getting ready for Saturn to move into Pisces in March. So there really is this sort of 3-year cycle of the way that we've been sort of, our attention in a very Saturnian way has been called to the altar of our purpose work and how we're here to show up and be a part of the ascension of our own selves and the ascension of humanity. So in this process, communicating with spirit as many times a day as we need to is going to be a part of how we're going to translate these codes, how we're going to embody these codes, and how we're going to actualize these codes in the next season of higher self-embodiment. And then sort of like moving from this texture in consciousness at all moments. Like we're just constantly in this divine ecstatic communication. And in ecstatic dance, and I guide this a lot in our yoga dance class, like the process of ecstatically dancing or channeling movement, like is a process of like receiving that invitation through the body and then translating it. And so we can quite literally practice that in our embodiment practice so that when we're sitting on our computers writing a sales page or in a moment of being in relationship or working with a client and there's something that wants to move through, we've created that template for ourselves in our nervous system. Like we've established that right within ourselves. We've reminded ourselves that we don't need to just pull from our front brain and find a solution. We're actually here to listen and be in an ever-evolving communication process. And we can boot camp ourselves in that through our practice so that in our process of showing up in our leadership, in our purpose work, in our relationships, in our creativity, we're already like in touch with how that feels to communicate with spirit. And sometimes if I feel disconnected from that process, it's like getting on a bike, right? You don't forget how to channel. You don't forget how to communicate with spirit, even if you've never claimed that in this lifetime yet. Like when you were a little ecstatic being just birthed from the womb, you were communicating with spirit and everything around you. So all of us have the capacity to channel. All of us are living ascended masters. All of us come from the same source. Nobody is more special or more gifted than anyone else. Certain people are just at different states of ecstatically higher self realizing and then embodying that aspect of themselves. And you are one of those people who is invested in that journey in a way that it's starting to show, which is so interesting, right? With like this birth metaphor, like it's starting to show So that's going to require you, like, the more we awaken our gifts, the more we tap into our intuition, the more we awaken to our higher selves. It's not like, oh, over time we need to communicate less with spirit. It's like, no, that channel of direct communication with your higher self and spirit actually gets louder. It gets louder. And I have found that the more I channel, the more I have to land in daily practice. Like, I can't actually get away with not landing in my own practice, because there's so many messages coming through that are so potent that I also then need the time to receive my messages so that I can show up to translate those bigger messages. And I'm like in the rhythm and in the flow, which brings me to our next card, flow with divine timing. In divine love and highest service, what unique code am I being called to translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self embodiment? Flow with divine timing. I mean, what an affirmation of our very first card that came forward in response to, what do I need to release and receive so I can gestate and express my true higher self nature? Like, it's like flow, trust, let it go, flow. Breathe into the contraction, let it go, flow. Don't judge the process, communicate with spirit, create space, embrace that life force is moving through you. And in moments, it may cause fractures in consciousness because the ego structure is ecstatically awakening and then remembering that it's the higher self. And, this is why following plant medicine journeys, there's a time of integration that's needed. We're just talking about higher self embodiment here. We're not even using any plant medicine in this devotional drip. And there's still this like fracturing and this sort of like cracking open that happens in the ego structure. Like this, there's like an uprooting. There's an uprooting where you can almost feel like in that process of ecstatically awakening, like you're floating in liminal space. So that feels like it's why these invitations of flowing and flowing with divine timing are coming forward. Because if you feel unclear right now about who you are and where you're going, and you're like almost having like a hard time feeling in touch with anything solid, that is so normal and natural based on where we are. So if nothing feels concrete right now, if everything sort of feels in flux, hallelujah, thank you, goddess. You are in divine process. And notice when we stop judging the process, we open to pleasure, because it's like, oh, there's actually nothing wrong with the state of being that I'm in right now. Like, this is just part of the process. I don't need to judge this as wrong. Like, there's no right or wrong. This is just me in process. Wow. That creates so much space for me to release emotion, release judgment towards myself, release anything that I've been holding on to. And we have this card, Summon the Rain, coming forward. And I want to read from this card because it's just such a beautiful description. And I love like the snow melt, the ice melt, the unfreezing, and then the way that that's pouring into the soil and the seeds are gestating and the higher self is gestating. I love that energy that Summon the Rain is coming forward with. And just in embracing like the emotions that are coming in and what may be awakening at this time, and maybe some of the tears that may be falling and the grief that may be clearing, like that's all part of the ecstatic awakening too. So summon the rain. As our wise ancestors knew, dance is the most powerful form of prayer and ritual. Dance allows you to interface with the sacred realms and connect directly to the cosmic dance itself. Conveniently, it utilizes the most powerful divine channel and magical tool there is, your body. In every human culture, dance and song are the most ancient forms of worship, prayer, devotion, and celebration. Therefore, you can be certain that the primordial instinct to engage in ritual dance is encoded in your DNA. Ritual and ceremony offer you a chance to attune more deeply to the sacredness of your life and the cycles that flow through it, just as they did for your ancestors. What's more, your body responds to the direct and focused intentions. Like a crystal clear wand, it can direct and guide and amplify energy. Ritual dance allows you to have an immediate experience with and direct response from the sacred streams of wisdom that naturally course through your being from the great goddess, God, universe energy. And when your movement is imbued with emotion, inner vision, and clearly expressed desire, Your prayers are powerfully activated and affirmed. That's why you are now being called to embark on this embodied journey of release, revelation, and connection. What is it that you truly desire? What are your highest visions? What is your most ideal outcome? Are you practicing that in consciousness? Get very clear on your most treasured intentions and access your natural power to create positive change. Do this by performing a dance ritual and expressing your prayers through movement. Then it invites us into a little movement exercise. So all three of these cards: communicate with spirit. Where'd she go? Here she is. Communicate with spirit, flow with divine timing, and summon the rain. Again, we're being called into like container energy, practice energy, in divine love and highest service. What unique code am I being called to translate, embody, and actualize in this next season of higher self embodiment? I'm really getting like the more you can be in your practice and then live from your practice, you're going to emanate your unique code. And then in response to that, those who are here to work with you are going to be magnetized in. But it's going to come from whatever it is that you're embodying. Vibration precedes manifestation. So whatever it is that you're embodying, like you're here to embody the code that you're here to translate and offer. So if you can be in your practice and embody your practice, then the teaching and the way that you teach and the way that you offer is going to be a expression of your embodiment. Like your teachings and your code is in response to what it is that you're embodying. So spend time cultivating your vibration. Spend time really caring about what you're practicing in consciousness. What's the vibration that you're holding? And every single day, tune into that space. Create space to communicate with spirit, to flow, to trust the divine timing of your life, to lean into the energy of the day, and then feel the energy throughout the day. Like it's beautiful to have a roadmap, but it's also beautiful to sort of just feel into like, where am I meant to go now? And then this Summon the Rain card is like, we're here to dance with life. Life is a dance, the great cosmic dance. I'm not even lying to you. I just looked down at my deck. I didn't even need to pull a card for our next prompt here. Master the Dance is just sitting there right at the top of the deck. And this has been coming through on the last, I think 4 or 5 episodes of the Devotional Drip. Like we are in a process of multidimensional self-mastery. That's what higher self-embodiment is. So what do I need to embrace so that I can higher self-actualize from the soil and the fabric and the unique code and blueprint of my soul? Master the dance daily. And the thing that I've learned about being a dancer is like every performance, every dance, every time you take the stage, even if you've rehearsed it 1,000 times, like it's going to be different. It's going to look different, and it should be different. Because that means that life force is moving through you. So what do I need to accept and embrace so that I can higher self-actualize from the soil, fabric, and unique code and blueprint of my soul? That life is but a dance and a journey of self-mastery. And I'm just getting that energy of like returning to the blueprint, feeling the blueprint, coming back to the blueprint, making the plan, returning to the plan, creating the container, trying the container out, seeing how it feels, flowing with the container, shifting the container, mastering the dance, having a draft, coming back, working on it again, like not having to get it right the first time, and like mistakes and like resistance and blocked energy. And again, some of that underbelly shadow stuff being a necessary part of the contrast, being a necessary part of the motivation that's required to push and surrender to the push. So if there's any energy of stubbornness that comes forward in relationship to mastering the dance, the next card just sitting at the top of the deck here is feeling and then fine tune. The feeling and the fine tuning are surrounding this master the dance card. So what do I need to accept and embrace so that I can higher self-actualize from the soil and the fabric and the unique code and blueprint of my soul? Know that just like healing and awakening, self-mastery and higher self-embodiment are nonlinear. And in that process, feeling, and fine tuning are what we're sort of toggling back and forth between as we create just the right little nest and birth space for ourselves. And it can be ecstatic and it can also be deeply intentional, right? And the more deeply we're rooted in our intention, the more ecstatic the dance can be. I find that when I'm improvising or channeling dance, the more that I'm like clear about like what's the prompt for this, or if my intention, let's say, is to move from an energy of celebration, which is the next card just sitting at the top of the deck, the more I can root into the intention of, okay, my intention for this dance is to celebrate, the more clear and concise I can be inside of that, that creates the container for celebration to take place, for an exploration of celebration to take place. So we're in this process of creating the container and then refining it, creating the container and then refining it, coming back to the drawing board, coming back to the drawing board, back to the drawing board, coming back to the container, crawling back inside, do our research, check in. What do I need now? 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 And not getting exhausted, right? We have so much resource and space and time for ourselves that if the energy of exhaustion and the feeling of exhaustion comes up, we meet that with willingness to be there for ourselves. And also, if we're tired, we can lay down and take a nap. We can sleep those 9 hours. We can rest. We don't need to get up at the crack of dawn in the middle of winter. So I'm channeling what's here in the field, but please translate that to resonate for you based on where you are in your process. And I want to drop into our last prompt before we transition into our higher self meditation for the Blood, Bone, and Honey Pot members on Zoom. How can I allow myself to call in, accept, and receive more ecstatic bliss in my divine process of higher self rebirth? Be magnetized, and what have we been talking about this whole time? Make mistakes. You're just right here waiting for us. How can I allow myself to call in, accept, and receive more ecstatic bliss in my divine process of higher self rebirth? Be magnetized towards what excites you, what lights you up, what's calling you forward. Another card we had, remember, was called. And then in that process, let yourself ecstatically make mistakes. From the innocence of your soul, like the innocence of a child trying something new. We will never allow ourselves to birth new things, to try on new expressions of ourselves, to sort of go to the edges of our comfort zones in new ways if we can't make mistakes in the process. The mistakes are a part of how we are reshaped. The mistakes are a necessary part of the fine-tuning and refinement process. And this card actually in the Cosmic Dancer deck talks about like every proficient artist like having to go through the process of making mistakes in their journey of self-mastery, or how do you expect to reach that state, you know? And self-mastery isn't even a fixed state. Self-mastery is a process because our potential is infinite, right? There's infinite timelines and infinite potential for how we can grow and be and become more of our higher selves in this lifetime. We're deciding how much we allow ourselves to ascend. We're deciding how much we allow our human ego construct to integrate with our ecstatic higher self identity and quantum soul atomic blueprint. We are the bridge. We are the decision makers. And the last card I want to offer for this drip today is take the lead. How can we ecstatically rebirth ourselves? We take the lead and we decide that in our birthing process, our guidance, our wisdom, what we're being magnetized towards, the callings of our soul take precedent over anybody else's, including whatever I've said here on the drip today. Your downloads, your wisdom, your intuition, your knowing, your beliefs take center stage. I'm so excited to support you in your process of ecstatically rebirthing yourself as your higher self through this next season of midwinter, moving towards spring. What a beautiful time for gestation and awakening. Excited to talk more about In Bulk and this portal that we're moving through in the Blood, Bone, and Honey pot. And I'm going to get ready now to transition into our higher self meditation. Again, if you want to access the corresponding higher self embodiment practices in relationship to this episode of The Drip, and then all of our episodes of The Drip back since September, we have a living practice library of higher self embodiment practices waiting for you in the Blood, Bone, and Honey pot. And then again, check the newsletter this week because I am getting ready to ecstatically birth a new container for one-on-one sessions called the Higher Self Embodiment Ceremony. And the code, the theme, the vibe is higher self rebirth in a major way. And that is going to be a higher self birth container that you can come into to get one-on-one coaching and mentorship from me in real time as we create the container for your ecstatic higher self rebirth in 2023. Many, many, many blessings on your journey. Oh, I see Ella here in the comments. Yes, I'm coming in for the meditation now. We are signing off for our drip. And if you would like to join us in the Zoom room for our higher self meditation, you can join us at bloodboneandhoney.com, or excuse me, patreon.com/bloodboneandhoney, or also on bloodboneandhoney.com. There's a little tab that says membership, and you can read about the membership and the tiers and join us there. Namaste, dear ones. See you next week or in the Blood, Bone, and Honey pot. Many blessings.